Well, hello from a beautiful rainy Johannesburg. It is Magic Manifesting Monday, and I want to continue the conversation that we were having yesterday. And thank you for all the private messages and the comments on the post when I was talking about Lamy, the elephant at the Johannesburg Zoo, who is in a grieving process right now, and how you can hold space for someone that is in what I call the waiting room of grief without putting any pressure on them to move out of it faster than they're ready. And I also want to talk about if you are feeling scattered or overwhelmed at the moment and feeling this sort of quickening inside of you as we sort of move toward this 1111 energy, how you can create a little more peace of mind by understanding some of what your nervous system is doing right now. And at the end, I am going to draw a card just to anchor in whatever comes up during our time together today, and also just to give you a stake in the ground to keep you focused and aligned with the tasks that you have at hand to get through this week. So yesterday we spoke a little bit about grief and how each one of us comes into the world with a very unique frequency and an aptitude for developing our innate gifts and capacities in a specific way to keep us aligned with what our soul has called us here to experience in this physical reality. And if you do desire to learn and embody animal communications, please have a look at my online program. It is such a great way not only to just give back to deepening your relationships with your animals, but to really understand your inner animal wisdom, your animal body that is the one that knows that no matter what is bumped at you or whatever challenges you come up against, you always have the power of choice to change that. And you have this amazing team of what I call my team players, your spirit helpers, your animals that are sharing your life with you and have come with their own lessons to help you to stay on course. And to just remember that our choices have to be very congruent with what we're asking for, what we are intending to do, which is what intentions are. And that means that we have to be in alignment and create the outcome we desire by doing the work, doing whatever it takes to get us where we want to be. As much as meditation and mindfulness can be very powerful anchors for us, you and I both know that we can't meditate ourselves out of grief or meditate ourselves out of fear or any of those sort of emotions that come up to actually help grow us. So, while it's nice to consider how others may be impacted by our choices, we have to make the choice that is best for us. And sometimes that means upsetting someone, not meeting their expectations or needs, or putting our needs first. Oftentimes when you're new to this work and you start to live from right relationship, you're going to get a lot of pushback from the people that love you the most, because all of a sudden they don't know what they don't know, the old triggers don't work anymore. So they've got to find a new way to manipulate you. And I say that with absolute love, because we're always doing that to get what our needs met. But back to grief, I wanted just to speak to this, because a lot of people are finding, remember, we've been in this illumination, this triple amplification of the one energy. We're in a 1 year. We're in the year of the dog, which is all about really getting congruent, being honest about where we put our loyalties, where we are not keeping appointments with ourselves, where we are not loving ourselves or taking care of our own needs over other things. And with this beautiful, powerful doorway, this big portal opening on 11th of November, you may be finding that you're feeling a bit of intensity and pressure and a little bit of overwhelm, because you recognize that you have to put your house in order. So, this is where grief comes in, that our pain isn't always something around loss of a person that we love. Grief can show up in many ways, and it can be the grief of perhaps unrequited dreams that you feel have passed you by, or it could be grieving over the loss of a position or a business that you created that is dying or is already left you, and you're still working your way through that. Grief can be the loss of home. I certainly went through that one, where I didn't feel like I had a choice in losing my home or my business or all my money for that matter. So grief has so many faces, and I think that we can't push it down. It's probably one of the worst things to do. And often what we find is when we haven't grieved fully, we hide it, just like we hide other unresolved issues and traumas in our body. And later on, and this is the work of epigenetics, it takes one little trigger that seems to come out of nowhere that pulls us into this full-on healing crisis. So we really want to do the work now while we have full vitality and we are healthy, and not wait until we're ill and low on energy to try and do this work. And remember too that a lot of the times people that are grieving, they don't want you to fix anything. They don't want you to make everything all right, or give them some platitudes that are always given with love, but that's not very helpful. A lot of time what people are asking for in the waiting room is for you to be patient with them and to hold space. And I can't remember, I think it was Gretchen yesterday that asked, how do you hold space for somebody else that is in the grieving process or is going through something challenging or is perhaps feeling isolated and alone, is to literally and physically it's as simple as just holding space. It's just being there. It's just about giving them witness to their pain, just being a good observer, a good listener. And rather than having all of this sort of come at them, because remember, grief comes in waves. It comes and it goes, and it always seems to come out of nowhere, is to just give them the validation, to say, you know what, I feel your pain, but I'm here for you. When you're ready, you know where I am, but I'm here and I honor your grief and I see you. And that way their loss gets to be recognized and validated. And if you haven't been able to express that adequately, you can't begin to make sense of it and recover. And this is why talk therapy or going to visit. My dogs are fooling around outside, so if you see them, hear them, that's just my puppies playing outside because they haven't been able to run in the rain. So in order to heal, we have to feel. I say this all the time, but let's just look at some examples and give me a yes. Hi, Anjana. If this is resonating with you, and tag somebody that you know might be going through grief and that this might be helpful to them. I really appreciate people sharing my offerings so that we together can heal the cosmic sort of global pain on the planet and hurt people who hurt other people and innocence because they have no outlet. So just for example, some of the ways that people may feel like they haven't got that holding space, or somebody that can just sit in silent support for them, is when they feel a loss of feeling of safety or support or belonging. And I see this often with victims of trauma like narcissistic abuse or scapegoating or neglect, that they're often told, oh, this was a long time ago, just let it go. Why are you still going on about that? Which is not very kind. In fact, it's another form of abuse. Or say that you've had a loss of a love relationship that hasn't been acknowledged with a partner or an ex-spouse even, or a married lover, or a distant or estranged relative, or even the impact of a celebrity's death. I know that when Robin Williams passed, I felt a lot of grief come up because he was such an exceptional person who shared his gift of laughter with so many people, and yet in his passing had felt so alone and isolated and felt like he didn't have any other way out except to take his own life. A loss that's not recognized as a bereavement, like a miscarriage or a stillbirth or the loss of a pet, or even the loss of mobility. You know, when I broke my Achilles tendon for the first time, and my leg was in plaster for almost a year because it snapped again, and I got infections in there, and then I got a secondary infection. And all this time I was pretty much housebound, and I was living with a narcissistic partner at the time who had alienated and isolated me from all my friends. I couldn't drive, so I had to ask him to take me anywhere. There was a lot of grief in that belief system that I had oftentimes during that recovery, that I might not ever walk again. And there was a space in grief where, when I finally grieved the fact that my leg wasn't the way that it used to be, I then also had to find a way to move past the fear of, what if I never walk again? Or I was actually really afraid of my Achilles tendon because I was afraid it was going to snap again and let me down. So that can be a grief as well. Loss, as I said, of financial security or status, which I had a huge whammy. I was kind of hit by a 4x4 truck where I lost my business, I lost my marriage, I lost my house, I lost all my assets, I lost everything, and I was pretty much bankrupt. I was in involuntary sequestration because my company had been liquidated because I'd stood surety for that overdraft, and I had a business partner that happened to be my narcissistic husband at the time, who made some really, really bad choices. So, I probably, if I'm really honest, there's parts of me that are still grieving the loss of that life that I once had. But it took me a good 2 years to grieve fully and come to terms with my new life and what I wanted to create as my living legacy going forward. So just know that there are many ways that we grieve loss, and different cultures have different ideas about how, what's acceptable time periods, for example, to grieve. In the Jewish tradition, they call this sitting Shiva. In the Greek religion, they keep themselves in black for, I think, I could be wrong, but I think for almost 3 months. I can't remember how long my mother-in-law wore black every day. But just know that any kind of loss that's stigmatized, as I said, and this includes suicide or overdose or a chronic disease, where you are mourning the loss of the healthy body that you once had, or the child that never came into your life, right, because of an abortion. All of those places, grief needs to be honored. It needs to have ceremony. The pain of it needs acknowledgement. And a lot of times our feelings, along with all the cultural norms and morality about death or transitional states in our life, whether we're moving from being married to divorced to whatever it is for you, those feelings become disenfranchised when society says you're not allowed to feel them. So it's just an insanity. And I remember it really well, being a highly sensitive child, that I was told by my mother, "Oh, Sarah Jane, don't be sad because you look angry." And as a child that felt everything so deeply, that was difficult for me to be able to hold space for, well, what do I do with that emotion? What do I do if I can't talk about the things that I'm afraid of, or the things that have happened to me, because there's shame underneath it. And in a lot of cases there is, with things like attempted suicide or abortion, or being irresponsible and maybe, contracting AIDS or one of the other venereal diseases, or anything, actually. Hi, Leona. So find support when you're ready to be heard, when you're ready to tell your story. And even if you don't feel like you're ready, find somebody that can honor the space and hold that space for you, so that you don't feel isolated and alone because you've been told that the way you're feeling is wrong. And most of this often happens in childhood, where you start to wonder if there's something wrong with you. Oftentimes this happens in sexual abuse or abuse when you're a child. And many of us, as I said, don't need to hear well-meaning platitudes that end up further dismissing the feelings of grief that you're having. And those are things that I'm sure that you're all aware of. But, like people saying, oh, don't dwell in the past and no one's perfect. And I'm sure they didn't mean it. Where your feelings when you're feeling hurt, when you are mourning and you are trying to figure something out, is so dismissive to go, oh, you know what, it's for the best, or at least, and this is a big one in South Africa with all the armed robberies and violent crime. Oh, well, at least you didn't die. At least everybody's fine. People are not fine when they go through big shock and trauma events, nor are they fine when they have had chronic, unpredictable, toxic stress day in and day out. So telling somebody that it's going to make them stronger, or, don't worry about it, or I know exactly how you feel, or you're overreacting, or you're too sensitive, or you're making too much out of it. None of that is kind. None of that is compassionate. And as I said, pain and loss needs to be expressed. Grief has its own sound, and you will grieve through your own primal voice differently to I will. So whatever you need to do, just remember that there is comfort in knowing that you will get through it when you choose to get through it, when you're ready, not when somebody else tells you that you're ready. And it really needs to be pain. Any kind of pain and loss needs to be expressed in order for you to go through the completion process of that. Not to file it away, but to learn from it and honor it and have some ceremony with it, to hold space with that in the waiting room. And I love what Alice Miller talks about as being the enlightened witness. There's a lightness just in the words of that, to be able to be that shining light for somebody that is in the dark. Not to say, I'm going to shine the light on you, but to hold the light. This is the holding space. To say the light is in you. I know you're in a dark place right now. I have no idea how that must feel to you, but I'm here and I support you. That's sometimes all anybody needs, is for you to witness their pain without judging it or trying to diminish their experience. So if you've been going through loss, or somebody that is in the grieving process right now, there is so much wisdom in giving it a voice, and there's relief in speaking about it too, in a safe place. And this is what animals have shown me, especially wild animals, because they're almost never traumatized the way that we are, because they let themselves complete that recovery process naturally. They come down when they realize the threat is no longer there. They're able to neuromodulate. They go back to rest and digest. If the threat of the lion has gone and the buck have run, and he catches his prey and he's eating and he's full, those deer, and you see this in the morphic field, they just completely return to grazing. They don't get stuck in the story and then make themselves sick, going into all the worst case scenarios that could have happened if that lion had caught them. And they can teach us so much about that recovery process, where we can learn to come down, take our nervous system down again. And also, they don't have cultural mores and moralities and societies and families that disapprove of their natural response and try to distract them. This is one of the exercises that I teach in the Out of the Blues program, where we talk about how to orient yourself to the room. If you are in a, recalling shock and trauma, that you can look around the room and you can say, you can see that you're safe, and that you can see that there is no saber-toothed tiger that's running from you anymore. And I think grief works the same way. If we're unable to fully express our feelings about what we've lost because we're too busy looking after others, or because of others are upset by our grief and asking us to move on because it's uncomfortable for them, because that loss is not recognized as legitimate, it stays with us, it lingers, it holds on to us, it gets buried underneath our tissue and in our fascia. And the body eventually will say no. So just know, give grief a sound. And some of the other ways that you can move through grief or support somebody in that process is just write it down. Let your tears drip on the page as you write. Put on some beautiful music that perhaps invokes grief to support you in actually moving through it. And there's some beautiful ways that you can do this with paint and poetry and art, to just allow the natural grieving process to occur. And they're very effective when you start to accompany the various practices with other people that can witness your feelings and support you in that journey back to wholeness. So don't let fear stop you from acknowledging that pain, because all it does is it prolongs your suffering, and usually the opposite happens. So if you can just take the time to listen to what you need and make space for it, you're going to find that it'll start integrating and cleansing and clearing and purifying, and then it will be released. So I really want to invite you today to just connect with Lami, that beautiful elephant that's grieving, or connect in with somebody that is perhaps grieving that you know, or perhaps you're grieving at the state of the world. You can connect in with the world, the collective morphogenetic field of all the animals that are in pain. But there's so many ways that you can connect yourself in and use these as anchors and stakes to keep you in that place of inner peace and mind, where you know that the action is not outward, but it's an internal dialogue of really just allowing yourself to feel, so that you can heal that pain and acknowledge your feelings that have gone underground, that you've maybe buried because you couldn't deal with them at the time, and you left them for later, and later never came. So your liver has got a backlog of unresolved traumas and experiences that it needs to work out. So just doing things like adding extra greens like chlorella or spirulina, or some beautiful spinach or kale into your juice, or some milk thistle, or slippery elm is also a great one. You know, a lot of times when we're holding on to grief, we end up being chronically constipated because we're backed up in the letting go process of the large intestine and the lungs, which govern grief. They're the contraction and the expansion on the metal element in Chinese medicine. So supporting your body in supporting your mental and emotional process is also what I love about working from an integrative perspective in my work, because that way you can compound the effect of moving through grief in a good way, and really using grief as this beautiful teacher to help and support you. Oh, thank you, Leona. Yeah, just to breathe. Sometimes just changing the way that we're breathing in and out, you know, breathing in love, breathing out grief. Sometimes just changing the breath cycle is an energetic way to support somebody that's, you know, really caught up here and can't get a full breath in and can't quite release the tears or release the primal scream. just by you changing your breath, you find your heartbeat starts to slow down and calm down. And that is that energetic contagion. That is where a lot of spontaneous healing happens. So just remember, it's always in the simple things, or for me at least, I always say that if it's not the trust process, if it's not simple. So just trusting that you holding space for someone that's grieving is enough, or trusting that if you are in the grieving process, that it is temporary and that it is growing and it is supporting you in becoming more resilient, and that you're a lot more courageous and brave than you might even give yourself credit. There's so many gifts in depression, in grief, in the healing process. So just allow yourself to feel so that you can heal. And just remember that you're not alone. If you need support, reach out and ask for it. Let somebody touch you, because we're not wired to go through this alone. And I think that one of the most insidious parts of the mental construct that leads to so much emotional turbulence in the body when we're confused is that the ego and the brain are always going to want you to believe in a unilateral experience that's framed in seconds and moments in time. But when you think that what is happening now is happening, it's happening now in the present moment. The ego and the mind are always in the archives. They're always going back to look for evidence of why you can't grieve or you can't be sad or whatever it is for you. So, and it has its place. Our psyche, our nervous system, and all of our other systems of our body are often overrun by all this external stimuli. And that's what triggers the internal garden, our internal animal body, to become activated in that fight, flight, freeze response. It's our subconscious beliefs and perceptions that are then in control, not you. So, our real self observes always silently. Think of it like an eagle that has this beautiful eagle's eye at this wide perspective, a 360-degree view on what's really going on. Until that psyche begins to awaken itself. And of course, our childhood experiences matter. The body, as well as the memory, have recorded each experience of each stage of your childhood in your early development. If you did not have a primary caregivers that were safe and secure in their own identity, if you didn't get secure attachment, then this is the beauty of this work, is that we can go back along your timeline, and you as the secure adult can then grow your child parts up. So just know that there's always a way, and there's a lot of different modalities out there, and incredible healers and facilitators that can support you. So find somebody that you can trust to hold that space. I always love to empower my clients to be their own medicine. So, when you start understanding a little bit about how you're wired and how your early developmental childhood traumas, traumas like having your tonsils out is a trauma. Breaking your arm and going under an anesthetic is a trauma to the body. Birth is a trauma to the body. Sometimes the birthing process is traumatic in itself. So we've all been traumatized. But when you were very, very young and more powerless because you depended on other people to meet your needs, wow, that's where I work a lot, looking at where there are unresolved pockets of trauma on the neuronates in the nervous system, and how they may be triggering you by any kind of external stimuli now, and how you can start to change that. So just know you can go back and edit your Akashic record. Charlie and I spoke a little bit about this yesterday, but just know that you do not have just one mind. That's an illusion. You are this amazing neurological, electrical vibrational, changing, adapting, multi-sensory being, and you are in many rooms and many minds. The mind is, just think of the mind like this really, really tall building with lots and lots of different rooms, and each room has a very different perspective. And only when you start accepting what has happened in those rooms during your timeline can you start to make it all the way up to the penthouse at the top and just embrace all that is below that has grown you. I always say life has been my biggest PhD, is my life experience. And when you can start to see that, that's when the enlightenment starts to happen. So step by step, remember, inch by inch is a cinch, yard by yard is hard. So baby steps. Get curious about what's going on, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what your emotions are, what your perspectives, your attitudes, your beliefs are, and become like this Inspector Clouseau, this marvel of an investigator that's starting to just overturn and look at some of the pages in this big book of life of yours for clues and insights. And you'll start to get excited about it because you're doing the work. And it's through that willingness to do the work that you're going to learn to understand and appreciate that you are a multi-dimensional, omnipresent alchemist. You are a magic maker. You've just forgotten. It just got buried under all of life. And you're reaching in and you're grabbing that now with this 1111 master number of illumination and amplification. You're doing the work. So keep going. Denial doesn't work. Trust me. I've tried many, many times. And just know you're okay. You always have been more than okay. Your perception of yourself is not limited. And the more you understand how you tick, the more you understand, oh, something just started playing on my computer. That's really weird. Hold on a second here. Wow. Yo, that was fun. Talk about some inspiring music coming on to just say, it's okay. You know, that was like real James Bond music, wasn't it? But just keep moving along your healing journey and do what you can now to offer your emotions and your inner child parts a voice, and your body. And just give yourself permission to be exactly where you are right now. Nothing to hide, nothing to prove. All you need to do is come back to self-love and self-compassion. And you find that when you can give that to yourself, you become a better space holder for others that are going to go through similar challenges and crises as you have. And I'll meet you there. So make this week count. Oh, I know I went really, really long, but let's just draw a card to just anchor in everything that I just spoke about to help you create more peace and calm in your mind as you go about the next week. I can't believe we're in the second week of November already. So let's have a look. Oh, I love this. These are Rebecca Campbell's cards, and it doesn't get much simpler than that, does it? I think that's what I love about animals. They're direct and to the point, and oracle cards are very much the same. It's your internal wise spiritual self, your wise woman within, that doesn't beat around the bush and waste words. She just is like, hell yes. And the card is just say yes. Just say yes. Give yourself permission to say yes and just take the next step. And I'll meet you there. If you'd like this video, please comment below. If you have any questions, share it with someone you know might be looking for some of this, because I really appreciate it when you share some of my insights and wisdoms with other people and get my offerings out in the world in a better way. So that's it. Have a good Monday. Remember, it starts with a yes. Oopsie, my dog nearly knocked my light over. And it starts with loving yourself and meeting yourself wherever you are. So have a good week, and I'll speak to you soon. Lots of love. Bye.